how is that portrayal for you as an actor, to have to who played one character for one season and then being another character, but inside of your primary character? How was that experience like?
That was definitely a very new experience. I had to work pretty closely with Jessica Bohr, who plays Janet. We kind of discovered Janet's mannerisms together, and we were both learning how to play this girl from the 50s. And we were just, a lot of the scenes cut directly from Janet's flashback into Janet and Maddie's body now, even when she's at her family's farmhouse and all these moments. So we were trying to just find ways for it to be pretty seamless between the two.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And not to, go with a lot of detail into what's coming up for the rest of the season, but I was kind of shocked at the end of episode 3, where we see, Janet coming home as Maddie. And I feel like I already have it in my mind where I think that could be going. But what would you tease? Because I feel like that's gonna open up so much, so many things. We have, the other characters who already kind of have an idea of, this isn't Maddie. So how would you tease what's to come this season about having Maddie come home finally, but not being Maddie?
I feel like we're constantly on the edge of our seat, wondering what this girl's intentions are. Why is she getting so close to Sandra, to Maddie's mom, and everyone involved in her life? And I think it gets a lot more suspenseful and almost thriller-like. This season felt a lot more intense with just the mystery and the questions, and wanting to make sure she's safe. I feel like Maddie just has this constant fear and anxiety about her physical body.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And Sarah, for you, what was it like being able to dive into a lot of Rhonda's backstory? I mean, we got a little bit in season 1, but we get to learn so many more dimensions, and also kind of get more context as to why the way she is. What was it like diving into that for season 2?
Yeah, it was exciting. I mean, the set deck was incredible for that flashback scene. I mean, the first time they showed me a little playback of me walking down the hallway, and Rhonda was smiling for the first time, and it was even just a jarring thing of feeling like a totally different person, like not
Yeah.
actually compared to that. But I was like, oh, this is someone we've never seen. This is Rhonda with like a lightness. This was her before everything happened. So I think it was really cool to get to see that day, and incredibly heartbreaking. And I feel like this character, like we've lived with these characters now for 2 years. So then to go back and get to actually do this and show that day and dive into that was a really exciting challenge.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of lightness, Nick, I think that Charlie seems to be a little bit lighter than he was in season 1. I think maybe that's what happens when you kind of process some of your trauma, and then some of our other characters haven't processed in the way that he has.
Yeah.
So what was it like kind of being with Charlie being kind of like the sounding board and helping a lot of the other characters kind of work through their ghost slash spirit issues so far in season 2?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's in the first season he tried to do the same thing, but it was in a different way where he like you said, the lighthearted, the levity. So he tries to be everybody's best friend, and he still had things he had to work through, and then we see him kind of work through that throughout the first season. And the second season starts off and he's starting to move on from that, and then we meet a new ghost that piques his interest, and maybe that also adds a little bounce in his step. But then, as the season continues to go on, we start to realize he's not done unpacking everything, and so there is more that he has to uncover. But it's fun being the one that is doesn't have to be as serious.
Yeah,
It's fun to be able to
Same.
to crack a joke or something, or find the lightness in the scene. Whereas
yeah.
it'd be weird if Maddie was making a joke.
Most
It
of the
would.
time.
Most of the time, yeah.
Sometimes. She gets us
Every
with
now
those
and
It's a
things.
rare moment.
And Milo, for you, we see Wally become frustrated with some of the limits of being like a love interest, but also being a spirit, and how he's kind of rethinking, what's his place, especially his place in relation to Maddie. Like, I think he's kind of the one who's coming up with he's the one who's questioning a lot of even if is Maddie dead? Is she alive? Like, is she in this space like we are? He's the main character who's kind of spurring that question that goes on these first three episodes. So, what can you say about kind of where his head is at this season and like wanting to help Maddie, but also realizing helping her may change things for not him, but like all of the spirits.
That's a great question, and it's something that I kind of like started just feeling as we were doing the show. And I think that he instinctually just wants to help Maddie, and he doesn't even really look at what it is they're doing. And it just feels like a now or never situation with the whole squad. We need to figure this out. And then when he starts thinking about it more and more and understanding what it is they're actually doing and what they're trying to get at, he realizes that he's kind of put himself in this like paradox of a situation where if he succeeds, he loses the love of his life, or of his death rather. And if he fails, he fails. I think that at any given moment, he feels a different way about it. It was really frustrating for me because it's complex, and he's feeling for the first time ever restricted by the ghost world, which I feel like he hasn't felt in a long time. So yeah.
That's good.
That was really good.
That was really good, Milo.
Restricted by the ghost world. Very good description of that.
Thanks.
And Josh, for you, I feel like even up until the end of the third episode, there's still like so much we don't really know about what's happening with Mr. Barden. We see the flashbacks with him and Janet, of course, but we don't really know a lot of what's going on. And I feel like most of the season, I mean, those episodes so far, are you being chased mostly by mostly by Wally, but we do see that in this season. But how, I guess, not to say how much do you know while you're, as you're reading the script, knowing where the story is going to go. What's it like being the character, at least in the first part of the season, that so much intrigue is about because we as the viewers don't know his motives. We're seeing a little bit about it, but with him and Janet, we don't quite know exactly what's going on. So how did you wrap your head around that when you were diving into the character, especially for this season?
I think there's a lot of conversations that I had with Megan and Nate about Mr. Martin and about where the show is going. We had some early conversations in season one that were kind of where they revealed to me to a degree what would happen towards the end of the first season. And there were similar conversations at the beginning of season two, and that was very helpful for me to understand the context of where emotionally Mr. Martin might be at in these first three episodes. And that, I would say that's the most helpful place to start, and definitely where I hung my hat, so to speak.
So what can you describe Simon's mindset at the start of the season and kind of like the conflict he has, whether he wants to believe Maddie or believe everyone else that, thinks that she's really behind Xavier's accident?
Right. I feel like it's really two things. One is, of course, he's losing touch with reality. He's convinced that he's crazy. But the second is pure betrayal. He feels abandoned. I would even say he feels a little bit of hatred because looking at Janet means, or looking at Maddie, the photo of her in the truck, is saying she left town without telling me, so he feels just hurt and doesn't really want to give her the benefit of the doubt. So that's where he starts off, and Maddie has a real interesting objective, which is how do you convince him to believe you? How can you give up his intelligence, which he values so much? How can you give up his cognition to think that, you're a ghost? It's basically asking him to, do the impossible, and what holds them together is their friendship. So that's what she has to access there is, how can I remind him that that we love each other? that's the only way he's gonna give up his intelligence.
And this season, I feel like the all their characters kind of had duos last season. But I feel like the duos, at least the first part of the season, the duos kind of flip. We see this bond between Simon and Xavier, and we see this bond between Claire and Nicole as well. It kind of flips it on its head. So Rainbow and Kiara, for both of you, what was it like being able to, I guess, like have your characters who were kind of not feeling each other?
Yeah.
That's and now they not only come up, get common ground, but I think, find a way to work together and actually be there for one another in light of, this person that kind of connected them was May, and kind of how they kind of come together to kind of work to solve things that have been happening.
Yeah, definitely. Claire and Nicole are definitely not each other's type, but I feel like they are very similar, but on opposite.
They're like opposites attract.
Yeah, yeah. They both kind of crave honesty. They're both like, and I feel like Nicole was very straight up with Claire and very honest with Claire, whether that's in a nice form or not. But she respects that Nicole doesn't sugarcoat anything, because neither does Claire. And I think they have that kind of mutual respect towards each other, and then they learn to love each other because of that. But it's not, they never were fake to each other.
And I think it's kind of sweet, because although we got together because of the circumstances, obviously we're in the hospital for Xavier and all that, but in that little hospital scene when she talks about her father, and then when you fast forward to the episode where she comes to my house and like asks for help, and I think although I want to like real quick be like, hey, well, how about your other, but seeing the vulnerability that I think that was the first time she actually got to see it that fully. And just her kind of respecting, like, okay, like, she's not perfect. And there's something kind of real in there. Maybe, this could be a friendship. And it ends up being that. And it's nice.
It's for you. So Xavier is like, he's the only character, at least so far, to experience this purgatory of sorts in a way that Maddie has. And it's so interesting seeing another character other than Maddie's perspective on how this world looks, and like how it would look outside of the school as well, how it would look in this hospital. How do you think this experience shapes his viewpoint through this season? Because I feel like this is it's a different Xavier than we've seen in season 1. It feels like he has like a renewed sense of focus. How do you know that this all affects him personally, as well as how this impacts the search for Maddie?
Yeah, I mean, I see it as like Xavier. I did a lot of like research about people that have these near-death experiences and how they describe their life as before and after. And I think that Xavier sort of has experienced this, and he's born again. And to the Church of the Supernatural, and he's got his buddy right here who's maybe the only person that he could speak to that really understands it. So he's almost like a Padawan to Simon's Jedi, following him around, pulling at his coattails, asking him questions. It's like an annoying little brother kind of relationship. And I think it's cool to see Xavier not be this jaded, sort of callous, self-loathing bad boy, and he's kind of just a massive nerd, which is awesome. And so I think it's a really cool. It's also really cool how they expand the lore of School Spirits, that these ecosystems of the supernatural exist beyond the walls of Split River High. In this hospital. And so I think that the idea of that, where that could go, is cool.
I think that this is a show where, at least when I watched it the first time, I had so many theories, and I think the way season 1 plays, I was like, you think that anybody could be behind Maddie's death? You think that April or supposed death? You just think that anybody looks like a suspect, and everything that's going on. I like that about the show, that keeps you on your toes. But for either of you, have you seen or engaged with like any sort of fan theories that people have about the show? Like the Reddit threads are very deep. People have all sorts of conclusions of the show. They have all sorts of feelings about the characters. Have you seen any of that? And if not, what's it like being on a show where they are just so invested, where they're coming up with their own lore and explanations surrounding the show?
So I heard a couple theories. The first pertaining to my character is that Simon has a brain tumor, and if he's slowly dying, he's slowly dying allows him to see someone who is a ghost. That's one of the first theories I saw. And then the second theory was that Mr. Martin arranged the murders of all the ghosts one by one out of loneliness so he could have company in the afterlife. Those theories really make you go, wow, people care about the show and are paying attention. And they catch little lines like, someone said, like, I predicted Janet. And I was like, that's awesome that it makes you go into a second season not like there for like fun. It's fun, but like you go in knowing that every acting choice you make in every scene is gonna, someone's watching it. It's gonna be dissected. So it's like double the care, you know. Yeah.
I read one recently where it's, what was it? Maddie's mom is Janet's sister who was stayed alive. I really liked that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That reminds me of one that I had thought of thinking about. Sheriff Baxter, Xavier's dad, would have been in high school around the same time as Wally Clark.
Ooh.
And my whole thought here is like, what if Wally Clark, because we know in the past he may have been, he's become a good guy, but he may have been a bit of a bully or whatever. Maybe he bullied Sheriff Baxter, and that's what caused Sheriff Baxter to grow up and want to become a cop.
Whoa,
Be so like ruthless towards his son, and those actions towards his son are what eventually leads Maddie into Wally's arms. So it's like this cool like
Season 3.
yeah, no, like,
I love that.